Hello, my lovely fifth graders. Today I am here to help you go back through your Learn Check. So let's look at question number 1. It says, which statement best describes temperature patterns in areas along the equator? So I am going to first highlight what I think is important. So I'm going to say best describes, and I'm going to say equator and temperature. And as I go through this, I have to ask myself, what is the equator? Well, we know that the equator is the imaginary line that runs through the center of the Earth. And because of its location, because it's not too far up north and not too far down south at either of the poles, the equator gets warm temperatures all year long, okay? So the closer you are to the equator, the more warm your temperature is going to be all year long. So let's look at our answer choices. We have temperatures along the equator vary from hot in the summer to cold in the winter. No, very rarely will it ever be cold by the equator. So A is a bad answer choice. I'm going to get rid of it. We have B, temperatures along the equator are consistently warm all year long. Well, it's kind of like what I just said, but let me read my last answer choice just in case. C, temperatures along the equator are consistently cool all year long. Well, we know that is not true. So my answer is number B, is the letter B, okay? So again, those temperatures, if they're at the equator, it's warm all year long, whereas up by the poles, the colder and colder you're going to get. Number 2, a student states the weather is the same as climate. Which response best tells the students the difference between weather and climate? So again, I'm going to go through. I'm going to underline or highlight best. And I want to do difference between weather and climate. So you can say, because Miss Hobson lives in New York, we know that New York has a very different climate than that of North Carolina. In New York, it gets really cold and they usually have really long winters, where in North Carolina, it's really small. That is our climate. So the climate of North Carolina is different than the climate of New York. But if we talk about weather, weather is more what's going on in the here and now. So we could say, this week we had nice weather. It started to warm up. It didn't rain this week. Things like that are describing the weather. So again, climate is the bigger picture, what the weather is consistently like. Weather is the little picture as to what's going on in like that week. So we have A, weather is about the wind and the rain, but climate is about the clouds. B, weather is the conditions in one day, but climate is the conditions over a long time. That sounds a lot like what I said. C, weather is measured with tools like thermometers, which that is true, but climate is measured with tools like forecasts. A forecast isn't really a tool. A forecast is what you do. D, weather is recorded on charts, but climate is recorded on world maps. Then we know that's not true either. So the B is the best answer choice, goes with what I said. So weather conditions are what's going on in the here and now, and climate is over a period of time. Excuse me. All right, let's look at number 3. Which statement best describes how weather patterns along the equator differ from weather patterns in the mid-latitudes, okay? So remember, the equator is that line that divides up the center of the Earth. And we're talking mid-latitudes. It's about midway through there. We know that anything towards the equator, the warmer it's going to be, and consistently warm. So let's underline what we need to, or highlight. So I want to highlight best describes, and I know I just highlighted something else, but that's okay. So best describes weather patterns, and let's look at mid-latitudes. And one of the things, if you forget what latitude is, we have the Earth is divided up into lines of latitude and longitude. And the way I remember it is lat rhymes with fat. So they're the fat lines. They're the ones that go this way. So these are latitude lines, the ones that go across the Earth like this. So we have A, temperatures along the equator vary within the seasons, while temperatures in the mid-latitudes are consistently cold. Well, we know that things by the equator doesn't vary that much, so A is a bad answer choice. B, temperatures along the equator vary with the seasons, while temperatures in the mid-latitudes are consistently warm. C, temperatures in the mid-latitudes vary with the seasons, while temperatures along the equator are consistently warm. Key thing, how about this? This might help you guys remember, if I could underline it there. Okay, we could remember, think equator, it sounds like equal, so it's usually going to be equal amounts of heat, doesn't matter the season. So if that helps you remember that, then go for it. Okay, so equator is consistent, equal temperatures all year long, nice and warm, whereas other places, the closer you get to the poles, the colder it's going to be. Number 4, which is true of the seasonal weather patterns of places that are at the same latitude? Okay, so we're going to do seasonal weather patterns. And that just means like what's happening somewhere in the winter versus the fall versus the spring versus the summer, and same latitude. That's really important. So if you remember again, the latitude lines are the imaginary lines. Lat is fat, so they're the lines that go this way. So if you were to go across the United States, like again, so if we go back to New York versus North Carolina, New York is at a different latitude. It's a much higher latitude than down in North Carolina, okay? But, so what that means is as you go across the lines of latitude, the weather is going to be very similar by lines of latitude. So everything that's in the same latitude as New York is going to have those cold winters. It's going to be all right in the summer. It really have the 4 seasons. Then if we go down to latitudes that are the same as North Carolina, they are going to have really hot summers, maybe not such extreme winters, so on and so forth. Okay, so A, they have the same wind patterns. B, they have the same amount of rain. C, they have the same intensity of sunlight. Or D, they have the same kinds of severe weather. Well, everywhere has the same kinds of severe weather. Okay, so that's not a good answer choice. They have the same wind patterns. Well, everything is kind of going the same, and we're going to get into that in the next couple of weeks. They have the same amount of rain. That is not true because there are some places that experience a lot more rain. So our best answer is C. They have the same intensity of sunlight. Picture that globe or your tennis ball and having a light shine on it, that if it's in the same latitude, it's getting the same intensity of sunlight. There we go. All right. Number 5, what most affects the temperature of an area? We have, so let's do most affects, and let's do temperature of an area, because that's what I think is important. So if we do most affects and temperature of an area, we have latitude, humidity, vegetation. Vegetation is like plants and things, and then precipitation we know is rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Humidity is also the amount of precipitation in the air. So which one of these makes the most sense? Hopefully you picked latitude, because remember, wherever the latitude is going to be more consistent with what the temperature is. Number 6, which has the greatest effect on the temperature of a region? A, the amount of plants it has. B, the amount of rainfall it has. C, the amount of humans it has. D, the amount of sunlight it gets. So let's go back and we're going to do greatest effect. And some of these answer choices don't even make perfect sense, right? And we'll say on temperature of a region. So which one of those has the greatest effect on temperature? Well, I know that the amount of sunlight it gets is going to affect how hot or cold it is. Okay. Number 7, this was one of the most missed questions. It says, which statement best describes temperature patterns in areas in the mid-latitudes? So let's highlight what's important. We have our best describes. Let's do temperature patterns and mid-latitudes. The mid-latitudes are, remember, the middle of the earth that we know that they're not going to be consistently warm, but they're going to have a difference in temperature. And I'm going to stop for right now.